Stephen Hurahan here at BrandMasterAcademy.com, and in this video I want to talk to you about brand promise, specifically how you go about developing a brand promise statement for your brand that can help to shape your audience's expectations around your brand experience. Now, the last brand promise video was really about getting into those misconceptions about what brand promise is and what brand promise is not, so we can understand how to use it as a strategic tool. And specifically, I spoke about how you can go about articulating a brand promise and communicating your brand promise and what your brand promise is actually in relation to. It's about those expectations and how your audience builds an idea and an image of your brand in their mind, and they set the expectations of your brand. So whether you go out and articulate a promise or not, your audience builds an idea of what they should expect from your brand in their mind. So if you want to help to shape that idea, then you need to make sure that your communication is refined. And a very good way to do that is to develop a brand promise statement that you can either communicate externally or you can use as an internal guide to shape your communication strategy. So if you do decide that you want to write a brand promise statement to help shape those expectations of your audience, well then here are some steps that you can follow to go ahead and develop yours. So step number one is to list all of your strategic branding elements in front of you. So when you come to the stage of developing your brand promise, you will have already built out the majority of your brand, and that includes everything from your brand positioning statement, your internal brand, so your vision, your mission, your values, and the purpose that your brand has, and even your personality and the archetype that you build your personality on. So list all of those elements in front of you, and they are going to be the basis of your brand promise statement. Now, the second step is to list all of these elements in order of importance. Now, always at the top of this list is your positioning strategy. And the reason for that is that you want to shape your audience's idea of your brand and the overall experience of your brand, but you want their core focus to be on the difference that you offer in the market. You want them to recall that first and to be able to understand why you're different, so that when it comes to that buying decision and they're deciding what brand to go with, they're able to understand the value that you offer. So at the very top of that list should be your brand positioning strategy, and the best way to represent that is through your brand positioning statement. So put that at the very top, but then from there you will have different elements of your brand that will take more emphasis on than others. So for example, your purpose might be a big part of your brand, and you know, a really effective resonance strategy with your audience. If you have a purpose that's aligned with who your audience is and you want to use that as a way to connect with them on a human level, then you might put a lot more emphasis on that than, let's say, your brand personality. So list all of your branding elements out in order of importance and emphasis that you want your audience to remember about the experience of your brand. Step number three is to develop a sentence around each one of these brand elements. Now, you will already have some statements already. So for example, your vision statement, your mission statement, your brand positioning statement. So some of these branding elements will already have statements in place. So you can use those statements as is, or you can reshape those. Remember, your internal branding is internal first, so your vision and your mission statement might be developed specifically for internal purposes. So you might want to reshape those, but create or develop or use existing sentences for each one of those branding elements before you move on to step four. Step number four is about refining. So you're going to take all of those individual sentences or statements and bring them all into a combined statement. Now, this is going to look pretty rough when you bring them all in together. So the name of the game here is finessing, and you really want to break out your copywriting skills here and start to really refine these individual sentences to make this paragraph, this statement, look like a much more refined statement that your audience can look at and get a real idea of what they can expect from that brand. Now, you can take this statement as is and go and put it on your website if you wish, or you can break this apart and drip it out into your social posts. But it's also very, very useful as an internal document as well. If everybody on the front lines of your brand that develop all of the communication at each and every touch point has this brand promise statement in front of them, well then they know the experience that the brand is setting out, the experience that the brand is promising to the audience, and therefore they can refine that communication. So it's very useful as an internal document, but you can go out and communicate that directly if you want. So this really emphasizes the point here that when you build a brand and you develop your communication strategy, you develop your internal strategy, your brand identity, you try to do your best to shape the mind of your audience, to shape the idea of what you want your brand to represent to them. But ultimately, they're going to make that decision. They're going to shape your brand in their mind. And that's based on a number of different things in terms of their personality, their perceptions, and of course, your communication and your brand strategy. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to emphasize as best you can and shape as best you can your image of your brand in your audience's mind. So what about you? What's your experience when it comes to brand promise and building a brand promise for your own brand or for the brand of a client? What are your strategies? What are your techniques that you use? Are you defining this through a tagline or through a brand promise statement? Or are you letting your overall communication strategy speak to that brand promise? I'd love to hear your experiences. Let me know in the comments below. If you've got any questions or challenges in relation to brand promise or the brand promise statement, just pop them in the box. I'll do my best to answer all of those questions. If you like this video, if you got any value from it, please give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. It'll let you know when I'm releasing a new video, and I'm doing that all the time at the moment. So until then, I will see you in the next video.